we're sitting here debating about what should have been and what we'd like to see, but let's work with what we actually have. Raylan, give us an indication of how we can actually make the budget work for us and what was actually in there for the South African consumer, even though it was minimal.
Absolutely. Obviously, there has been some relief to the lower end, as we've already discussed. To me, though, one of the biggest changes was something that was mentioned in the last tax year. Basically, what happened is that the travel allowance itself has been taken away, where a deemed kilometre can be used. Now, it's a situation where people actually have to keep logbooks of their proper business travel, and only once they've actually been able to claim for that will they effectively be able to claim back for that travel allowance. The other problem as well is that it used to be on 60% that PAY used to be obviously paid on the travel allowance. Now it's gone up to 80%. So what's happening is that section has really been cut down quite substantially. I can understand the side of it in terms of people driving around. We're trying to get as many people off the roads as possible. Hopefully the Gautrain will be up and running shortly and people won't have to commute as often. But I feel that there's still a huge amount of people in business that need to go and see their clients face to face. And being in that situation, I feel that they should still be in a situation where they are obviously reimbursed. So please bear in mind to obviously keep your logbooks, because that becomes very, very important for your tax year.
So James, what if you haven't started your logbook? We're already sitting, the first week of March.
Get started. and actually, ideally, it's not just the actual employee, it's the employer as well, because what they should have been doing, if they haven't done so already, is taking the odometer readings of the cars as at 1 March. Just a point to make, this whole change to the travel allowance, this was announced in the budget, last year's budget, 12 months ago, and now taxpayers are going to feel the pinch for the first time at the end of this month. But it's all well and good to say that the top rate hasn't changed, but this is going to really, certainly from a cash flow perspective, and people still have their monthly installments, their bond repayments and everything else to make, this is going to hit them.
How's it going to affect your tax returns at the end of the financial year? Surely that's also going to be quite a difficult thing to handle.
Yes, the e-filing of tax returns, of course, the whole effort and movement towards that is to try to make the life of taxpayers easier in the submission of their tax returns. If I could just move off from the travel allowance to look at some more important aspects with regards to wealth of individuals. Probably the biggest fringe benefit that individuals do have, because the travel allowances and the medical aid, etc., they're relatively small in terms of an impact on a person's financial position. The big thing is, of course, is your employee share schemes. That is a particularly large contribution to personal wealth, and there were announcements made with regards to certain things that are going to happen with employee share schemes, one of which is to again close down on certain avoidance schemes that are in the market. For example, the switching out and swapping of restricted equity instruments. I think employers and employees need to have a closer look at their employee share schemes, especially multinationals, especially foreign multinationals that have global employee share schemes. And just a warning, because a lot of those schemes are not properly being administered. Looking as far as the PAYE compliance is concerned, because these global share schemes are run on a global basis, and sometimes the information sharing with the local subsidiary is not quite what it should be. So, as a little word of warning to multinationals, have a good look at your employee share schemes.
And STARS have there was legislation passed, not in the too distant past, which effectively places the burden now on the local, I think Ernie's quite right, the local subsidiary to actually withhold the PAYE, notwithstanding the grantor of the actual shares might be in the US.
So in terms of restructuring in share schemes, I mean, do you see that happening in South Africa? Is that the next step forward?
The restructuring opportunities are not that great. Mm-hmm. The 8C is a particularly well drafted piece of legislation. They've been very careful to keep tabs on any possible leakage in employee share schemes, but employee share schemes, simply because of the contribution to people's personal financial position, is a large contributor, and restructuring, not very many opportunities, but in terms of compliance and administration, I think just a word of advice that to have a closer look at that.
Do you reiterate that? Do you echo the same feelings about employee share schemes?
I think the next level really to look at in terms of employer and employee benefits is really the new taxation that's going to be coming through. It's not really new, it has been there all along, but we've obviously, SARS has recently picked up that people and companies are not paying fringe benefit tax on unemployed group benefits. Now, how is that really going to affect a person? Obviously, you're going to pay fringe benefit tax now on that unapproved group scheme benefit in terms of your premium. But the point is it's not going to be that severe. If we're in a situation where you're looking at a small amount of fringe benefit tax on a premium that's been paid versus being in a position where you're actually paying tax on the proceeds, you're obviously better off still in most situations to look at an unapproved scheme because the unapproved scheme is still paying you out tax-free. And if you take all of those small increments that are put together for a long period of time in terms of your fringe benefit tax, it still doesn't make up for the massive amount that SARS would take at the end in terms of that. The other thing obviously is also for actual pension provident fund side of things where you're looking at an approved scheme. The approved scheme side of it really means that you are just going to pay tax on those proceeds at the end at the end. But the fortunate way of looking at it from that perspective is that estate duty now is no longer charged or levied on an approved scheme. That was another thing that came out in this budget, which was quite interesting, is the fact that they're looking at doing away with estate duty. I think we were mentioning it a bit earlier, when we're in a situation where last year only 700 million rand was basically brought in from an estate duty perspective. Now with estate duty, obviously there's a 20% amount that's been paid to SARS for anything over and above 3.5 million rand. Also last year we had that fantastic change that if a spouse had to pass away, that 3.5 million rand would obviously be pushed up and the second spouse on their death would have effectively 7 million rand tax relief. So I think moving forward, because it's such a cumbersome scheme, it's really a situation where doing away with estate duty, obviously it's not really benefiting anybody because people are using trusts, and I feel that's probably not a bad idea to move forward.
But it's only impacting a small percentage of the population anyway, so I think that should be borne in mind.
Yes.